I'd like to thank the Dollar Moore Foundation, also the Lake City Creative Alliance, the Ron McNair Life Center, Dale Smith. He has a new diorama upstairs now, so y'all go over there and look upstairs at his new diorama of Lake City between 1900 and 1910. Zach, I tell you, if I didn't have this guy this semester, he sets up and he does everything for me. He's from Francis Marion. We have an internship with him this semester and next semester too. And of course,
what's his name?
This is Zach Blankenship. And of course, we wouldn't be having this thing without y'all. So thank y'all for coming tonight. If you were born at the Whitehead Infirmary and have not told us, Dale and myself, that you were, please, we got a form out over across the street. Please fill it out. We've got about 250 so far. We're going to put this plaque on the wall in the operating room. Would you believe the first birth became a doctor, and his name was Marion Fowler. Stephen Marion. Well, what is it, Marion? Okay. And also the last was also a doctor, and we call him Tarzan. His name is Robert Whitehead. Okay? So if you were born at the Whitehead Infirmary, let us know, please. We're going to be talking about the movers and the shakers of 1916 and 1917, the events that happened during that period of time. We also are going to talk about the happenings. And then, please, as we slow it down a little bit, I would love to have your comments. And Chris is from the Meade Agency from Florence. He's going to be videotaping us tonight. Okay? Okay. Let's get started. These are slogans that I found in the newspapers. Watch Lake City grow, pull for Lake City, or pull out. Okay? And Lake City leads. Okay. 1916, then December 1915, we elect our officials for the year 1916. Stephen B. Rogers became mayor. Stephen Rogers actually owned Rogers Avenue all up and down on this side of Carolina Avenue, all the way to the swamp, and also the cemetery. He had a little store at the corner of Church Street and Blanding. Charles Street. Thanks, Sam. Ashton Williams, the son of our Dr. Asbury Williams, he became a federal judge later on in life. J.W. Floyd, not Wesley Floyd, but Wesley Floyd's grandfather. Ward number 2, George Dixon. Number 3, Walter Holland. And then Ward number 4 was William Severance. And then Commissioner of Public Works, Mr. DeBose. Now, some of us old-timers will remember Mr. DeBose. He was a big-time Presbyterian and also owned DeBose Furniture, downtown Lake City. Mr. McKenzie, if you knew Mr. Carlton McKenzie that worked at Roper Drug Store, this is his father, and Mr. J.P. Matthews. Mr. Billy Whitehead was Miss Rachel Henry and Miss Edgar Whitehead's father. Chief of Police got $75 a month. How much is that today?
80.
Actually, it's $1,700 a month, which is comparable today. And then we had Mr. Williamson. Mr. Rogers was our first police chief, and up on the hat has chief on it. Now, you're going to have these guys playing double roles too, because the chief of police also ran the hotel in town. He and his brothers, Mr. Marion and Mr. George. Mr. George King is the father of Miss Frances Fawcett King. She was married 4 times, okay? And they rented or leased the Pelican Hotel from Mr. G.L. Sauls. Mr. G.L. Sauls lived in Gaze at the time, and he built a house in town and came into town, and I think it's right near the cemetery, the Lake City Cemetery. So we had 2 hotels in town, 1916. How many hotels do we have today? Maybe 3 or 4? 4? Okay. The other hotel was the Skirrington Hotel. The first Jewish marriage took place in 1916 with the Nachmans and the Wolfs. Molly Nachman and Simon Wolf. Now, something unusual I found out yesterday with doing this was that the Jewish marriage, the bride is on the right side of the bridegroom. And all other marriages, she's on the left side. This is what I found out yesterday. Is that right?
Yes.
Reverend?
Yes, it is.
Okay. In April of 1916, we have a 5-ton ice plant. And we had problems with getting the right kind of water. They dug deep, couldn't find any water. They dug some more and they dug some more until they came up with the right type of water. Okay? The plant, where is the plant? Mr. Charlie, where was the ice plant when you were a boy? The ice plant?
Go down by the railroad.
Okay? The ice plant was right in front of the Rob. Okay, right in the where the roads met together. Right. Yes, sir. Okay, and this was the Thomas and McWhite. Thomas and McWhite had the ice plant, also a ginning plant, which was across the street, across the railroad track, right beside the Imperial Tobacco Company. And then they had a milling outfit.
What did they make at the ginning plant?
They gin cotton.
Oh.
Okay? Okay? Can we move on? Okay. All right, in April of 1916, we have the Farmers and Merchant Bank, which became known as the Palmetto Bank later on. The Farmers and Merchant Bank was built in 1907, and they were so prosperous in 1916, they expanded. Now, if you will look, I know you can't, but there is an alley between Mr. Charles Kelly's store and the bank, a 12-foot span. Okay? All right. And then later on, the bank looked like this, back in the 50s and the 60s. We know it as Joe's Barber Shop today. Class of 1916. Y'all recognize anybody? Now, if you did your homework, you would know. Okay? But to point out three of you, this lady right here is Miss Lizzie Gravely or Miss Lizzie Stewart. The guy behind her was Mr. W. Flowers. This is Miss Alita Bowen that married Mr. MacIver Bowen of the Bowen family. Actually, when the Baptist Church was built in 1919 and 1920, I'm going ahead a little bit, but what the heck? She was the first bride in that church. Okay? All right. Mr. Matthews, Mr. J.P. Matthews, finished building this store. And it's the store we have today, which is the walk-through. Okay? From Main Street to the Village Green. It was burnt in 1914, November of 1914. And it took a year to build it. Okay? Mr. C.M. Kelly had two stores. He had two wooden stores at one time. Now it's going to be brick. Right there at Oleo Studio, and also a Serenity Touch. Mr. J.S. McClam builds his store. And then we have two movie theaters. How many do we have today? I think we're going, backwards, I think. Okay, this is the double stores. Okay, this store here on the top is on Main Street. This store here is run by the Ward brothers. Right here. There is not a filling station, but what they call a pumping station. And this is A.B. Brick store. And he dealt with furs. He would buy furs and sell furs. That was his main source of income. The mural, I'm having a problem. The mural is on Ackline. The store is not there anymore, but the mural is. This is J.S. McClam's store, which is Ritos today. Did I repeat it right? No? Ritos. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sam. In 1916, we had the Great Flood. In 2016, we had water, didn't we? We had a flood, and then we had a hurricane, right? We had 15 hurricanes in 1916. The one that really affected us was the July 8th hurricane. Cat 3, it dumped 2 feet of water, and then the following week had one to hit Charleston, and it dumped 24 to 15 inches of rain in 24 hours. Problem is they didn't have any waterworks, so it just stood there. But look, this is at the trestle. Now, if you ever went to the trestle, it's deep. It must be maybe 10 feet deep in some places. On Ackline Avenue, this is right in front of Harry Talmadge's aunt's house, his grandmother's house, Mr. W.T. Askins' home, or Harry's house, really. The other one is facing south from the depot, and in front of the Imperial Tobacco Company. This guy right here, oh, come on, Ken. There's a little guy, waist high, right here. That's how deep the water was, right up to here. So it all depends on where you were in Lake City at the time. But look how industrious our farmers were. A month later, they sold 700,000 pounds of tobacco for $83,000. $83,000 equates today to $2.5 million. So the tobacco crop wasn't affected. The prices range from 4 cents to 60 cents. And the banks had to stay open till 6 o'clock at night. And how many banks did we have? We had 2. Bank of Lake City and the Farmers and Merchants Bank. Okay? Okay. J.S. McLeod has his store. Same year, he comes up with the idea of having a movie theater. It's called the Ritz Theater. That's what we knew, okay? It said 1,000 people. Population Lake City in 1920 was 1,800. So you'd almost fill up half of Lake City in that theater. The ice factory was being completed by August, and in September, school opens up with an enrollment of 354 students. Mr. W.T. Askins is the chairman. J.T. Cottingham is on the board. We talked about him last time. We talked about him the last time before, too. B.W. Jones and some of the teachers. Miss Cynthia McGraw. That's Spunky's uncle, aunt. That same year, Miss Cynthia marries Mr. Dunham Singletary. Then you got Miss Bertha Morris, the Hennett sisters, and Eva North. How many of you in here had music with Miss Eva North? I didn't, but one of my classmates did. And we graduated in 1966. So 50 years she taught music in Lake City. Amazing. Did I give you enough time to read it? Okay. This is the Ritz Theater. Started in 1916, closed in 1956. 40 years, 1,000 spectators. Upstairs was reserved for the blacks, and downstairs was for the whites. Now we have what we call the theater park. We ready? Okay. At the Imperial Tobacco Company, 700 hands. They were advertising for 1,000. Population of Lake City in 1920 was 1,800. I believe that everybody in Lake City depended on tobacco. Had 700 people working at the Imperial. You also had 3 tobacco warehouses. You had brasseries, you had the farmers, and you had the merchants. And they depended on the tobacco during July to November. What happened in the spring? You had the produce. We're going to have something in December. So we got year-round agricultural stuff in Lake City. The People's Hardware Company is one of the stores of the True Luck Block. Guess who ran them? The Schofields. Schofields furniture hardware store in Florence started in Lake City. They claim that stuff started in 1918, but we could say they started in Lake City in 1916. Okay? Dr. Rollins. Dr. Rollins was going to open up an infirmary, but he couldn't find a suitable place to have it. And Dr. Rollins is Earl Holloway's uncle, Drew's great uncle. Okay?
Where did he open?
He didn't open it at all. The next one was the Lynches infirmary, which was at Dr. Lynch's house later on. Plowden Motor Company, Ford Motor Company, Plowden. They didn't start off with Ford, but it was one of the first auto companies in Lake City. Okay? Well, Mr. Rutledge, one of the owners of the movie theater, left town. And his place was called the Our Motion Picture Company. But we had some people in Lake City that wanted a movie theater. And they formed what we call the WAGs. Aston Williams, Tracy Askins, which was Harry's uncle, Mr. Charlie Green, which was Charles Green or David Green's great grandfather, and Mr. Murray Severance. Mr. Murray Severance was the father of Miss Cecil Rogers. They used to live down the street from the Baptist Church. And then the Elgin Hotel was opening for the public in February. Had 2 people to go see Woodrow Wilson's inauguration in 1817. When is inauguration now? And what month? January the 20th. Before that it was in March. And Mr. Wesley Singletary, you know Mr. Wesley, or you know he had his daughter, Miss Mary Driggers. Mr. Mary Driggers, Mr. Wesley Singletary's father, and Aston Williams. Okay, the DuPonts and the Youngs opened up the theater from Mr. Rutledge. Holloway and Bowen. the Big Brick Warehouse. The Big Brick Warehouse. It was located on Saul Street. It covered the entire block at one time. Free delivery. Are y'all satisfied with the delivery of the mail today? Read that, please. Mr. Spivey, 2 round trips. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. 9 miles one way. And then in the afternoon, another 9 miles. 18 miles round trip. Would you carry the mail, Kenny? It took a man to do that. Really, actually, it did. And then in April, we have the street signs and also the house numbers in 1917. Mr. Moocher Epps, y'all Methodists should know Mr. Moocher Epps, or his wife, Miss Looney Shah Epps. That's her husband. Buys the Glen Tobacco Warehouse, and it's right beside the funeral home on Church Street. That empty lot, that's where it stood. And then later on, he built his house, which is the funeral home. 1917, April, we have a big parade. All the cars we could find. And we took down Main Street. And we were getting ready for war with the Germans. Okay, with Kaiser Wilhelm. World War I started April 6, 1917. In May of 1917, we have a new chief of police, Miss Thelma Baines, Miss Patricia. Do you know Miss Thelma? Used to live on McAllister Street, right beside where you used to live. And then Mr. Jerry Michaud's father was the night police. Wayne's great-granddaddy. Right. Okay. Mr. T.J. Cottingham became fire chief. Does he look like a fire chief? He's an educator, he's a banker, now he's a fire chief. Okay? Mr. Dixie Caldwell lived on Rogers Avenue, big time Presbyterian. He kept the fire engine, and his salary went down from $10 to $5. And then we had to keep, I couldn't find out who kept the sanitary cart, but he got paid $50. That's the honeydew wagon. Okay, we had horses, you know. We didn't have cars. We had a car. Okay. Town council voted to buy a Ford and convert it into a trash cart. But then we had a councilman that says, well, I'll sell you mine for $150. And then the siren. Later on, I want to tell you about the siren we had in 1920 later on. But right now, we had the siren at the electric plant. You know the little building right in front of Rob. The little building it says Charlie's Workshop or whatever in the woods. That was the electric plant in Lake City. And then Stephen Rogers got paid $45 to keep the town's 3 mules. The Star Warehouse, 1917. It was 300 by 100 feet, 30,000 square feet. You know where this is? Or was? It was on South Act Line, where the senior citizens place is today. The Home Guard. Now, we were in war, so we formed the Home Guard and came up with 102 members. Mr. Arthur Parker, Miss Julia Parker's husband, was a captain. Woody's grandfather was first lieutenant. No, not 1917.
We had a home guard that my dad was in.
Right. That was during World War II. Okay. And Mr. George Dixon, second lieutenant. 1917, I think the graduation class went down a little bit. Remember the class we had in 1916? Didn't have but 7 folks. And I think all of them, I don't know about Kennedy Hodge, but all of them were female. If you didn't make the mark, you didn't graduate. The Elgin Hotel in May of 1917, caught fire in the kitchen. And it says the guests escaped with very little clothes. Happened at night. So what you see today is the remains of the Elgin Hotel. In July, now when was Prohibition? Anybody can tell me when Prohibition started? In 1919. We were ahead of the game in Lake City. The council voted to regulate the shipment, transportation, carrying, storing, and in possession of alcoholic liquors and beverages. So you couldn't, unless you went to a blind tiger. Okay? Okay. In July 1917, Imperial was asking for another 1,000 hands to work. In July 1917, Mr. J.M. Trueluck starts to build, again, a brick hotel. Okay, it was at the corner of East Main and Church Street. The entrance would be where Old Burger's Jewelries was. And then Mr. L. R. Trueluck had his store, which Severance is today.
What is?
Severance. This is looking east, and this is looking west. Trueluck's Pelican Hotel. The new theater, which is another theater, charged 25 cents and 50 cents. 25 cents for matinee and 50 cents for nights. and it ran all the time except on Sunday. Okay, 25 cents would be $5 today, or $10, which is about right, about right. And then on September 13th, 1917, the speed limit went from 10 miles an hour to 12 miles an hour. Okay, so it's, and a lot of times the cars had to yield to the horses in town. In October of 1917, we tried again. Remember, in 1909, we tried to have Rutledge County. 1917, we do it again. We're not Rutledge County today, are we? We still in Florence. Okay? Everybody caught up on the reading assignment? Okay. Mr. Fillmore, along with Mr. J.M. Truelove and Mr. McInnes, who will be the mayor of Lake City later on, opens up a general merchandise and a butcher business. Marion, can I say this? One of the businesses in town is going to be a butcher shop. So we could completely going around in circles, aren't we? Next time we're going to be talking about the men who registered for World War I and other things. And guess who that is? That is Mr. Eugene Moore's father. And for the longest, I thought he went to Clemson. But it says he's a student of the City Dale. Of the City Dale. The City Dale. The Citadel of Charleston, South Carolina. Okay? Next time, 1918, 1919, March 27th, mark your calendar. We have a new exhibit upstairs. Anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
Men from Lake City were in World War I.
Don't know yet. I'm compiling. I've got about 80 people that have registered and I have gone to see. There's a surrounding area, just like City. A's and B's, about 90. Probably a lot more that registered, but I don't know how many folks.
We didn't have a draft.
We had a draft. This is the first time we had a draft. The first draft in the United States. Thank y'all so much for coming. And please go across the street for something to drink and some refreshments. Thank y'all.